Every time a dusty wooden box is pried open, a whisper of the 1960s stirs to life the faint rustle of celluloid, the flash of a hidden camera, the echoes of laughter in a shuttered studio hallway. Imagine stumbling upon the private archive of Roddy McDowall, iconic actor, consummate collector, and secret chronicler of Hollywood's golden decade. In those boxes lie thousands of unseen photographs, unmailed postcards, candid Polaroids, and handwritten notes that reveal a side of Tinseltown no gossip column ever touched. The backstage alliances, the off-camera romances, the rivalries that smoldered behind closed soundstages. Let's start with the man himself. To millions, Roddy McDowall was a flickering face on screen. The vulnerable Cal in the Planet of the Apes series, the devoted brother in How Green Was My Valley, the urban confidant in Cleopatra. Yet few knew that off-screen, McDowall wore another hat, a meticulous archivist. For decades, he collected souvenirs of his colleagues, snapshots taken on location at Pinewood Studios, ticket stubs from midnight screenings, postcards from Rome sent by Claudia Cardinale. Each item carried a story, and each story illuminated a hidden facet of Hollywood's crew of dreamers. In the first glance at his archive, the contrast is striking. Publicity stills, posed, polished, prim, sit alongside grainy behind the scenes images, Elizabeth Taylor tugging her diamond necklace off. Camera to ease the discomfort, Steve McQueen lighting a cigarette in the wings while waiting for action. Natalie Wood rehearsing lines under fluorescent scaffolding light, eyes downcast as if in prayer. These were stolen moments, unguarded, raw. They capture the tension between the legend and the human being, between the star's public performance and the private breath between takes. It all begins in 1961, when McDowall was teetering between his early success as a child actor and his burgeoning adult career. On a rainy afternoon in London, he snapped a photo of Richard Burton, rehearsing for Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. The frame froze Burton's expressive eyes, the same ones that would later challenge Elizabeth Taylor's. That snapshot, tucked inside a weathered portfolio, became a talisman, proof that behind every brilliant performance, there lay an unfiltered human soul, prone to doubt and longing. Fast forward to 1964, and the archive fills with a new kind of urgency. Hollywood was in ferment. The studio system was cracking open, replaced by renegade directors and youth-driven projects. In McDowall's photographs from that year, you can almost hear the drumbeat of change, Jack Nicholson and Dennis Hopper cutting loose at a rap party for Easy Rider, Sharon Tate laughing in a sunlit patio, oblivious to the darkness that would soon follow, Jane Fonda leaning into a telephoto lens, her eyes alight with the political fire she'd soon fan. McDowall captured it all, often risking studio security to smuggle his camera past the gatekeepers. But the archive isn't just about pictures. Between fading envelopes and brittle pages lie handwritten letters exchanged between McDowall and fellow artists. Notes that map the shifting alliances of the decade. In one 1967 letter, he writes to Peter Sellers about the emotional toll of shooting Dr. Dolittle. You and I both know that comic genius demands a private shadow. Don't let the laughter blind you. In another, he confides to Debbie Reynolds his own fears of becoming irrelevant, as the old guard gives way to young lions. That letter ends not in despair but with a resolve. If we adapt, we survive. If we cling to comfort, we fade. Embedded in these intimate exchanges are the fault lines of Hollywood's transformation. The generation debt, the disillusioned producers who banked on formulaic musicals, while a younger wave craved authenticity. The shifting roles of women, actresses who insisted on combining power with passion, from Faye Dunaway to Goldie Hawn. Even the rise of method acting, Marlon Brando haunting stage door entries, Dustin Hoffman disappearing into character for weeks before a single scene finds context in McDowall's annotations. He'd jot margin notes on the back of envelopes. Brando's a genius, but a perpetual storm. Those scrawled comments read like intel from the front lines of an industry in flux. Amid the pulp and prestige, one name resurfaces more often than any other: Elizabeth Taylor. Their friendship blurred the line between rehearsal room confidences and gala glitz. A Polaroid from 1969 shows Taylor brushing powder off her cheek as McDowall adjusts her collar. An unguarded moment of camaraderie between two stars grappling with fame's price. In a typewritten note included in the same packet, McDowall mused, "Liz laughs louder than anyone I've ever met, but her laughter trembles." It's a line poised between compassion and revelation, capturing the paradox at the core of celebrity. Transitioning from printed pages to home movies, McDowall's archive then reveals what no still image ever could: living motion. Grainy Apple reels of parties at Hollywood Hills hideaways show Gregory Peck easing Judy Garland onto a velvet sofa, or Steve McQueen driving along Mulholland Drive just before sundown. You see Michael Caine twirling behind a camera, unshaved and unshaven, practicing American slang over and over. Decades later, these reels crackle with the electric charge of an era that refused to stand still. They show a community bound by art, by ambition, and by the unspoken pact to keep the cameras rolling, no matter the stakes. As you sift through these fragments, photos of Meyer Lansky seated quietly in a back booth at Musso and Frank's, a scrawled itinerary for Elizabeth Montgomery's London press tour, a telegram from Roman Polanski apologizing for missing a rap party. You feel the weight of a hidden chronicle. This is not a scandal sheet, it's a private diary of Hollywood's evolution, from monochrome studio sets to vibrant auteur-driven cinema. The real revelation is not that stars slip behind closed doors to indulge in late night whiskey or whispered affairs, but that McDowall, in his role as observer and archivist, trusted us with those secrets. He knew that understanding the soul of an era requires both the highlight reel and the outtakes. And so, with that first box cracked open, we embark on our journey into the clandestine heart of 1960s Hollywood. Each image, each word, each flickering reel beckons us deeper into the untold story, where the personas we worshipped were only half of the tale, and where the true narrative lay concealed in private archives, waiting to be rediscovered. Deep in the quarter-mile-long attic of McDowall's Beverly Hills bungalow, behind a stack of unmarked trunks, lies another dimension of his archive, the private correspondence that mapped Hollywood's invisible highways. In these letters, we discover not only star-studded rendezvous, but the hidden negotiations that shaped cinema's boldest experiments. A faded envelope, postmarked February 1965 and addressed to R.M., contains a single sheet of Ritz-Carlton stationery, bearing Warren Beatty's loopy handwriting. Initials scrawled across the top read, W.B., and the note begins, "Roddy, I know your name opens doors. We need the studio to greenlight Bonnie and Clyde's ending as intended. The blood must spill. The audience must feel the risk. Let me know if you can whisper this to the right ear." That plea reveals McDowall's quiet stature as a behind the scenes influencer, a man whose discretion carried more weight than any publicist's pitch. McDowall's role as a cultural gatekeeper emerges again in a brown interoffice envelope labeled "The Lost Screnpay." Inside rests a nearly illegible draft titled "Night Crescendo," hatched by a then-obscure John Cassavetes collaborator. Taped to the first page is a hand-typed memo. Paramount insists on a happy ending. Cassavetes refuses. Project aborted. McDowall's margin note, penned in his meticulous script, reads simply, A Tragedy of Compromise. With just a few words, he resurrects an entire alternate 60s cinema, an independent spirit crushed by studio mandate. That fragment alone rewrites film history, hinting at the daring stories that might have reached screens had risk outweighed convention. Amid these unrealized masterpieces are the clandestine romances that pulse through Hollywood's backlots. Stashed inside a worn leather folio are Polaroids depicting Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner entwined on a Caribbean set, their bare arms heavy with sun and unspoken longing. Nearby, a packet of magnetic postcards between Liza Minnelli and Richard Rodgers reveals coded flirtations, Rodgers's signature heart enclosed in brackets, Minnelli's reply underlined. When the curtain falls, meet me at 23 uttered, no witnesses. And hidden at the bottom of a fabric-lined box lie unsent love letters signed, yours eternally, P.L., addressed to Lee Marvin. Their prose is raw. No mention of cameras or contracts. Yet those words speak volumes about intimacy in an industry built on illusion. Not every secret is gilded with glamour. A sheaf of confidential memos from MGM's executive suite exposes the cold calculus behind star making. One document coldly outlines Spencer Tracy's declining health. Possible replacement recommended if performance weakens. See risk assessment attached. Another, dated mid-1968, orders James Stewart to trim dialogue in turn on a dime or face recasting. The final sentence reads, "Cost overruns unacceptable." Reading these memos alongside McDowall's underlined shocking words. How many lives dictated by budget lines? We glimpse the tension between commerce and artistry and the human lives sacrificed for box office returns. In contrast, McDowall's personal annotations soften that corporate hardness. He circled scandal column snippets about Lana Turner's custody battle, scribbling one word in the margin: unfair. Beside it lies a torn script scene he hoped would cast her as a sympathetic heroine. By aligning cutting gossip with nurturing creative intentions, McDowall demonstrates the duality of an industry that thrived on sensationalism yet yearned for empathy. Beyond letters and memos, the archive pays homage to the unsung artisans of Hollywood. A leather-bound sketchbook belonging to Hal Pereira, art director for North by Northwest, reveals meticulously drawn costume ideas for Cary Grant. Collar angles annotated next to director Hitchcock's own scribbles on lighting. McDowall's tiny notes, stars beside sketch details, signal his admiration for an artist whose work rarely graced marquee credits. In scribbled appreciation, he acknowledges that behind every icon's wardrobe lies countless hours of silent collaboration. Equally riveting are the secret teachings of stunt coordinator Bob Simmons. Grainy black and white Polaroids capture the mechanics of a fall Reg Simmons strapped to a hidden harness as he somersaults through the air. Background painted to resemble Mount Rushmore's grandeur. His handwritten instructions on the back describe optimal wire placement and cushioning techniques, revealing the ballad of danger that made on-screen heroics possible. Through Simmons's unseen labor, McDowall highlights the invisible performers who risked life and limb to create cinematic spectacle. As we untangle these threads, a picture of 1960s Hollywood coalesces that transcends glitz and gossip. We see the quiet negotiations that decided which stories lived or died, the loves that bloomed in twilight shadows, the corporate memos that determined careers, and the artisans whose grueling craft built the dream. Roddy McDowall, archivist and confidant, preserved these artifacts not for fame, but for a deeper truth, that cinema is as much forged in backroom deliberations and private passions as in soundstage spotlights. Now, with his trove unfurled across our hands, we hold the power to rewrite a decade's legacy, illuminating the blurred line between myth and reality, between the star on the bill and the soul behind the camera. One of the most electrifying discoveries in McDowall's collection sits not on film or in Polaroids, but on spools of reel-to-reel tape. These half-forgotten audio journals, recorded by McDowall himself during long drives between sets, contain candid interviews with directors and costume designers, actors rehearsing monologues at dusk, even stray snippets of scripts in development. In one 10-minute segment, he captures an impassioned plea from Sidney Lumet lamenting how censorship boards strangled Cat on a hot tin roof before it reached Broadway. Lumet's voice trembles as he warns that without artistic freedom, cinema becomes nothing more than painted faces, performing hollow lines. These tapes transform McDowall from mere observer into guardian of unguarded moments, preserving the raw humanity that the big screen so often polished away. Even more striking are the draft screenplay pages tied together with a fraying ribbon. These drafts reveal early versions of scripts that later became cinematic landmarks, scenes that were cut, characters that vanished, endings that never saw the light of day. Among them is an alternate ending to Bonnie and Clyde that ends with both leads fleeing into the Texas plains, rather than meeting their infamous fate at the ambush site. The pages are scrawled with handwritten notes by McDowall emphasizing thematic shifts. He underlines lines about freedom and responsibility, questioning whether audiences seek redemption or retribution. Reading these reimagined narratives, you sense the path not taken by Hollywood, a route that might have rewritten audience expectations and elevated the art form beyond blood-soaked tragedy. Beyond scripts and audio, McDowall's archive includes a trove of experimental film fragments that test the boundaries of conventional storytelling. Stashed in a tin canister, a 5-minute montage titled Echoes of Silence juxtaposes silent footage of a deserted soundstage with overlapping voice-over testimonies of extras recounting their dreams of stardom. In one scene, you watch a prompter drift on a dusty track, while a chorus of whispered regrets, "I wanted my moment," or "They never saw me," swirls like a ghostly symphony. These avant-garde reels were never intended for wide release. They were McDowall's personal experiment in meta-cinema, questioning the very nature of performance. In them, you realize that Hollywood's real story extends beyond its heroes to every person left unseen in the frame. Through these grainy experiments, McDowall invites us to consider cinema as both art and archive, where every human presence, no matter how small, shapes the grand narrative. In another battered crate, we uncover rare promotional materials that flip the polished studio machine on its head. One gem is a hand-painted poster for a Tennessee Williams adaptation that never reached theaters. A moody watercolor depicting Marlon Brando reclining with a broken cigarette. Beneath his name, McDowall's note reads, "Smolder this hellfire." Alongside it, early publicity stills for Rosemary's Baby exist, in a draft stating, Mia Farrow standing before a velvet curtain, her gaze defiant yet vulnerable. These test images were rejected for being too raw, too human. McDowall tucked them away, believing they captured the essence of an artist unshielded by studio filter. Today, they read like prophetic glimpses into the auteur era, where directors like Polanski and Scorsese demanded authenticity over artifice, and where an actor's unguarded expression carried more weight than any star-studded cast list. Perhaps the most poignant section of the archive is the collection of personal diaries, where McDowall traced his own journey through those transformative years. In entries dated 1968, he confesses to sleepless nights after shooting scenes with Sophia Loren. Haunted by her unwavering confidence, he describes a midnight taxi ride where he and Jane Fonda shared dreams of social activism and film, unaware that the world would soon see her become both a screen legend and a political icon. McDowall's diary intertwines celebrity anecdotes with reflections on societal shifts. The civil rights movement, the counterculture, and the tension between celebrity privilege and political responsibility. Through these private musings, we witness not only Hollywood's evolution, but a man's struggle to reconcile his art with an ever-changing world. As daylight fades over McDowall's estate, the silent reels click their final frames, and we emerge from the shadows with a richer understanding of an age fueled by creativity and contradiction. His archive reminds us that every legend has a hidden ledger of trials, victories, and quiet regrets. From unsold posters to whispered memos, from clandestine love letters to candid tapes, Roddy McDowall entrusted us with Hollywood's unseen heartbeat. Prepare to witness the archive's hidden vaults and the stories long buried beneath marquee lights. In the next section, we will peel back yet another layer, uncovering the decades' forgotten premieres, private screenings, and the subterranean network of film societies that sustained maverick visionaries long before they graced the silver screen. Late at night, when the backlots dimmed their lights and the main gates clattered shut, McDowall's bungalow became the epicenter of a vibrant, underground film community. Within his library lined with reels and esoteric periodicals, cinephiles gathered for clandestine screenings that resurrected silent, era epics and experimental art films no studio dared release. Attendees received invitations folded around antique ticket stubs of long-lost premieres, the Paris launch of Man with a Movie Camera, the limited Berlin showing of a reconstructed Langnoir, even a private revival of Chaplin's truncated 20-minute short, A Woman of Paris. These private viewings were not mere watch parties. They were forums for passionate debate about montage theory, narrative deconstruction, and the evolving language of cinema itself. McDowall, ever the discreet host, insisted that each gathering begin with a brief contextual lecture. He would dim the house lights, cue a 35mm projector, and step forward in his tailored suit, adjusting his glasses as he pointed to faded film, stills pinned above his sofa. With quiet enthusiasm, he traced the timeline of a lost Fritz Lang sequence, or compared the visual motifs in Godard's Breathless to earlier Soviet filmmakers. Discussions often stretched into the early hours, fueled by the sharp aroma of freshly brewed espresso and the rustle of unwrapping homemade canapés. Those ridiculed canapés, McDowall's playful nod to studio catering, tasted richer under the dim glow of projector light waving across the screen. He concluded the prelude by highlighting a rarely seen trick effect, an optical print he'd contracted from a Swiss archive, reminding his guests that rediscovery often lies just beneath the surface of what we assume lost. These gatherings also served as incubators for collaborative projects. On one memorable spring evening in 1967, McDowall unveiled a reel of test footage from an unfinished John Luc Godard documentary on jazz in New York. The montage spliced smoky club interiors with street musician improvisations, and McDowall's notes, scrawled in red ink, revealed proposed voiceover segments he had recorded using his own voice. Mimicking Godard's playfully dissonant rhythm, a small group of cineasts immediately volunteered to compile translation subtitles and source complementary archival interviews, effectively salvaging the project from oblivion. Within months, the footage circulated among friends of friends, screened in West Coast cinematheques and Paris lofts alike, sowing the seeds of what would later be celebrated as a pioneering cross-cultural dialogue in film. McDowall relished these grassroots revivals, believing each tucked-away segment could reshape our understanding of cinematic history and bridge artistic divides previously thought insurmountable. Meanwhile, McDowall's connections with private collectors unlocked treasures beyond his own walls. Through a discreet network of archivists, he obtained nitrate prints of Fritz Lang's Metropolis featuring the long-lost Moloch sequence, viewable only in select gatherings due to the film's fragile condition. In his basement vault, he preserved tinted celluloid frames of a version of the Gold Rush that included Chaplin's original ending, where the little tramp rigs his cabin to take flight. The annual Flight Night reel share became legendary. Attendees donned goggles and sat before a makeshift screen, experiencing Chaplin's aerial ingenuity in full color for the time in decades. McDowall's ultimate goal was to ignite public interest in restoration efforts, knowing that without advocacy, these cinematic fossils would dissolve into dust. He collaborated with emerging preservationists at UCLA and the British Film Institute, sharing prints and funding digitization projects to safeguard these treasures for future generations. Not all premieres were deemed screenworthy. Behind locked doors, McDowall hosted viewings of flawed rarities, early takes of Bonnie and Clyde, that ran half an hour too long, intermission scenes in Spartacus that stumbled into incoherence, and the Richard Burton directed Hamlet that never found its tone. Each director's curse screening revealed the alchemy of editing, as McDowall encouraged note-taking and spirited critique. He believed that exposing the raw, unedited process demystified filmmaking and invited a deeper appreciation for the final cut's artistry. Regular contributors included budding critics from Cahiers du Cinéma and The Hollywood Reporter, theater projectionists with secrets of arc lamp repairs, and even a couple of actors who dared to challenge their studio contracts, if only to witness unvarnished cinema. McDowall treasured each diagnosis like a rare artifact. His passion ignited a renaissance that rippled beyond his walls, inspiring museum exhibitions, university symposia, and a wave of collectors determined to unearth forgotten celluloid treasures. Through McDowall's vision, the 1960s underground transformed into a global movement, forever altering how future generations valued the hidden histories of cinema. His advocacy also spurred film schools to add preservation courses to their curricula, training archivists and technicians to handle delicate nitrate prints.